It's been a while since my last Meet the Author, and I'm really excited about this one because I get to interview someone who is exceptionally special to me. He's a businessman and an award-winning filmmaker, and he's also one of the most talented musicians I have ever met. He's emotional, spiritual, and loving, and he is my little brother, Sam Branson. Hello, Sam.
Hi, Holly.
Hello. This is really exciting. I've never interviewed you before, and we know so much about each other. But I thought it'd be lovely for our Meet the Author series to get to know you a little bit more, so we could dig deep into our childhood and you as a person and what makes you tick. Is that all right?
Absolutely fine. Yeah, it's nice to be interviewed by my sister. I hope you're going to be kind.
I'll try.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about questions, and actually one of the things that popped into my head was my first childhood memory. And my first memory is you being born. And being in the hospital, and it's not actually you, I think it's more the apple juice that they were giving me. I have a real strong memory of being in hospital while you were born. And it was a lovely sense of just mum, dad, you, me, all being together for the first time. Can you remember your first childhood memory?
When I was born? No. Do you know what? I can't. It's so hard because when you think back that long ago, I think memories are kind of fractured and you have like different things. I remember, I don't know how old I was, but I remember taking taking mum's step machine, you know, the thing that you used to step onto and turn it upside down and slide it down the stairs. But I
remember that too.
Yeah. I think probably that. But then I can't also remember whether it's from photos, but I remember a photo of me blowing out candles, so I can feel like I remember that. But I'll take going down the stairs on the step machine.
That sort of sums up our childhood, I feel. That we had this massive staircase at home, and our mum and dad were very happy for us to take anything from around the house and use them as adventure playgrounds within the house.
Yeah, it definitely.
And I remember we were properly bouncing down the stairs, a bit like Macaulay Culkin in Home Alone, where he flies down the stairs and out the door. It's exactly what we were doing.
Yeah, it was. We didn't go out the front door, but we definitely got some speed up down the stairs.
Yeah. How did you find school?
So it's an area I'm very passionate about, as you know, and I think my life experience of school was, I was, you know, pretty bright and pretty engaged in school, and then I had a specific event which kind of, now reflectively looking back as an adult, had quite a big impact on me. At 12, I remember being hit by my headmaster trying to work out a maths equation, and he was berating me in front of the class and eventually hit me over the back of the head and walked out. And I remember slowly drifting from the front of the class to the back of the class, and it's only now, however many years later, that I look back and I go, why was it that I really wasn't that engaged in school? And so when I went to secondary school after that, I very much focused on seeing friends and being social, and you know, I was always polite and nice and engaged in the social people aspect of school, but I really wasn't that interested in my academic side, which now reflectively looks back and goes, all it takes is one or two, you know, big events in your life to kind of really make you lose interest and lose some self-belief. Anyway, since then I've gone on to get a real thirst for knowledge, and you know, insatiable thirst for knowledge, and I feel like my academic career has really started in my sort of late 20s, and so I'm grateful for that. But you know, I look back with a bit of regret. I think, you know, what a blessing to be in an environment with people who are really knowledgeable and sit there where you don't have any other pulls on your attention and be taught and learn about something really interesting. But I also believe that education in its own time, and you need to be interested and engaged, and whether that was a personal thing or whether that was the school system failing young people's sort of interest and engagement in the topics.
Well, I'm sure it's a bit of both, because they actually say our system that we have at the moment only works for 30% of people. I was quite lucky. I think I was one of those 30% where the exams came easy to me. Whereas if exams don't come easy to you, it can put you off for life. You don't want to take the exams, you don't care how you do. And actually you could be unbelievably bright and work exceptionally hard all year and do really well, but that final exam, the one that counts, doesn't work for you. So the system is failing. And so I do think it's a bit of both, a bit of that personal experience, but also 70% of people do not get on well.
I really do think, though, context is so important. You know, people like play music and do other things, but I was like, my child wants to learn music. I'm like, oh, well, great. We'll get them to learn their favourite song, because in the process of learning their favourite song, they'll get all the encouragement. Wow, I can play my favourite song. And I've also learned 5 chords. You know, whereas everything in school seems to be so it's so specific. It's about like learning all this information that you might apply one day to become it's like self-actualization through a future event. And for me, young people are potential now. It's like, how do you actually contextualize what they're doing in real time? So they're actually learning that chemistry can create X, 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 and X, and actually build something practical in the classroom that actually has value, versus preparing for some future event that may not happen yet. Yeah. And you know, there's been studies done of school kids taking exams, who all the ones who got A's resitting the same exam 3 months later in the same room, same people, same exam, and they get like D's. And it just shows the system is all about regurgitating information instead of actually embedding in the lessons that these kids are learning. So,
and that's where the project-based learning systems that some of the American schools and some of the UK schools are now taking on board is so vital.
Yeah.
You have a phenomenal group of friends who actually all stem back from school time. What does friendship mean to you, especially old friendship?
Yeah, I've been blessed. I mean, that's one thing with school that I'm incredibly grateful for, is that I made some friends that are still my best friends now, a large group of them, and we're a real unit. And obviously as we get older and we have kids and we get serious jobs, and everyone's, some people are moving overseas, it's harder to see each other regularly. But friendship is everything. I think for me in my life, having such a unit of core friends that I've grown up with, having fun with, sharing memories with, and in a life where there's been lots of pulls and demands on my attention, and lots of opportunity, and also with that a lot of pressure and stresses that comes with the sort of life that we've been born into. Having a solid group of friends that have seen you grow up, from a young age. It's like learning an instrument or learning a skill when you're young. It's intuitive when you get older, and I think relationships of that length become intuitive, and you've always got your mates to keep you in check, or people to go to when you need. And I feel very blessed. I look around when we're socialising, we're out and about having fun, or just catching up with friends, and actually how unique it is to have such a large group of old friends to lean on.
When it came to leaving school, and some people know what they want to do, and they go off to university, take on that course, others don't. How did you feel? Did you know what you wanted to do when you left school?
No, not at all.
Did it make life difficult not knowing?
Yeah, it did. I did. But I had a very fun, explorative gap year with some friends, and Dad came and joined me for a bit, and I just had a really amazing experience traveling the world, and I've always sort of believed that traveling and experiencing cultures and people and places is education in itself. I think it gives you a broad perspective of things, and it humbles you, and you just have such a much better insight to world events when you're watching the news or anything like that. You can paint a better picture, and so I learned a lot from that. But I think coming back from my gap year, I was quite lost. I was like, what the hell do I want to do with my life? I think we've been very blessed with lots of opportunity in our life, but if the world's your oyster, you can get lost in the ocean. And it's that kind of like, sounds like a nice problem to have, but actually everything's got its own, set of challenges, and yeah, doing some soul searching, and I kind of was like, okay, what do I do? I went to university to study hospitality management, because my dream was to always do something in hospitality. And after the third time in a row that the classroom had been moved, that they didn't know where it was going to be moved to, I was like, I'm out. I'm not going to spend a couple of years of my life doing this. So I did Le Cordon Bleu chefing, and did a music course, and eventually came to being invited on an expedition, Arctic expedition with Will Steger.
How did that come about?
So first trip I did was with Dad, and we did a 3-week trip from Clyde River to Igloolik, to sort of raise awareness of the Inuit and the changing landscape, and we were travelling with Inuit between these two villages. And it was really powerful for me, actually, being in an environment like that. And then a couple of years later, I took on the big expedition, and that was life-changing for me.
And how long was that expedition, and where was that to go to?
So the second one was just I was invited to be the rookie on an expedition with Will Steger, who's a famous polar explorer, and 4 other polar sort of young people under the age of 28. And we were trying to raise awareness of climate change amongst young school kids in the States. And we travelled from a place called Resolute Bay to Eureka Weather Station on Ellesmere Island, and it was a 3 months out in the Arctic. I remember getting out there and just I went doing a little training ride, and it was like -50, and I didn't wear enough clothes, and when you're cold, you can't be positive. You're literally, how do I survive? And then we got the tents out, and they were literally like this, and I was like 3 months, and I just had this moment where I was like, what the hell have I let myself in for? But I was just sort of looked in the mirror, and I was like, whatever you do, just savor this as an opportunity to learn and grow and have a good experience. And when I adopted that thought process, it really helped. And you know, after falling asleep on the sled every 5 minutes because I was so exhausted, I ended up really embracing it, and we had 3 months of just breaking myself down, building myself up again, understanding how to use my mind to stay positive, completely detached from modern civilization. You know, just the whole, you know, you see a mountain in the distance and you think you're going to get there that evening. 4 days later, you reach the bottom. So your whole sense of time shifts. And it's very rare, I think, for people to get that much into nature for that extended period of time. And that was, I would say, the turning point for me, where I was kind of lost to going, okay, right, wow, I know what I can achieve. And, you know, and having taken every step myself and done something that I was incredibly proud of, it was extremely difficult.
And how lucky to have had that experience quite young, because you could have been wandering lost for quite a long time.
Yeah,
How
definitely.
old were you when you went?
23, and it definitely was a kind of, you know, a chance to kind of really understand what I was made of and do something that really made me proud. And I mean, it was very strange coming back. We had like 3 months of daytime pretty much. So I remember coming home and the sky going dark and feeling like it was the most claustrophobic thing ever, and not being able to sleep inside, so I had to sleep in the garden. Really strange things. But what it did give me more than anything was an objective perspective that has always stayed with me ever since. So the idea of like, no matter what situation I'm in, I have an ability to sit where I am, but also kind of look at the big picture, because I've been in an environment where the world was an objective thought. And that, I think, has landed me in good stead in life.
That trip also gave you much more of an understanding about our planet, the problems we're having with climate change. What's it inspired you to do from that?
So being out there for 3 months in the Arctic with, you know, Will Steger, all about climate change, just completely, just emotionally just settled into me. And we saw an ice shelf the size of Manhattan that had broken off, and I remember coming back with a real, much stronger awareness of the changing world and humans' impact on this. It's a natural thing that occurs, but human beings are massively accelerating it. And so it really inspired me to be more engaged in our impact as a species and what's going on in the world, our responsibility to do something about it, and how dramatic. I mean, when you see something the size of Manhattan, an ice chunk that's broken off, it's like, I mean, when you see it with your own eyes, you really realise the extent of what's changing up there. And so I was always passionate about the world, but this really sort of lit a fire under my arse, and actually at school, although I wasn't that engaged academically, I would sneak out and go to the cinema quite a lot, which I could have been wasted time, but I actually ended up in film, and so I wanted to merge the two things together and try and create a production company that makes film and content that actually really gives people an insight into the world and informs them about really meaningful things, but not just preaching to the converted. You know, I think a lot of my knowledge I got when I was younger was I was a documentary fiend, and there's such an amazing tool to kind of, you can, in the space of an hour and a half, travel all over the world, meet 15 different people, 10 different perspectives, emotionally engage in a topic. And so I wanted to take my love of the world and film and merge them into one business.
And you've done that, and you've actually won awards because of doing that. I mean, it actually just shows that if you go into what you're passionate about, you can do some really great things. And you're one of the only people that I know who will happily and willingly go to the cinema on your own. You love it.
I did yesterday.
I know. Sam, you rang me yesterday and you were like, I'm just off to the cinema on my own. I'm so excited to go and thing. But it shows you've been like that since you were very little. Always loved films. Always loved documentaries. And if everyone could then try and work out what their passion is in life, you then can have often very successful businesses out of it.
Yeah. For sure, I think passion is key to anything you get involved in life. I think I'm very passionate about people following their heart, and I think there's things that I've done in my life where hasn't been truly aligned to what is right and in me and things that I have. And actually, if I look back at the things I've achieved, the things that actually really sit with me, that are genuinely satisfying, are the things that were true to what my heart felt and what I wanted to do. And I do believe you'll have a lot more success in life if you're willing to listen to that voice inside about what it is that you want to do, even if at the beginning it's tough.
And it has to be the voice inside you and not the voice that someone else is putting on you.
100%. I mean, society and at the moment has, I'm very passionate about incentive structures, and I think at the moment they're very warped. There's a lot of people who, obviously you have to make a living, you have to, pay the rent, you have to do all those sort of things, but in general it's this, even as an adult, self-actualization through a future event. When I get this job, I will be. When I get this paycheck, I will be. When I get this, I will be. And it's like, actually, no, you are you now. Be happy with who you are, where you're at, and actually connecting to yourself in this place. I think you get a much better self-awareness, and that drives what you do. So it's kind of, it's who you are that makes you do what you do, not what you do that makes you who you are. Is a kind of flip on that story.
Do you have a favourite documentary that you've made? One that you feel most proud of?
Yes, I do. It's not the most filmic one. We've made sort of, I would say, quality-wise better cinematography and story kind of in a different way. But the one that I have a real soft spot for was Breaking the Taboo, which was my first feature doc at Sundog about the war on drugs and painting a picture of international drugs policy and really sort of showing people at the time, no one was talking about it in 2012. And it was quite groundbreaking topic to talk about and sort of painting a picture of why the war on drugs doesn't work. And we released it in partnership with YouTube and had 1 million views for a long piece of content in a month. And it was just really cool and innovative, and I produced it, and it was our first big feature doc, and went around the world and released it, and so that was it's a real soft spot.
And what's been amazing to see since then is so many countries and states in America starting to decriminalise and legalise some drugs.
Yeah, and I think I do really think that we need to be very careful about the way we go about it. Drugs aren't safe things to take, but the point is that people take them anyway, and you've either got criminals in charge and no public education, and actually part of the reason why governments don't do it is because then it's their responsibility to look after people. Society alienates drug addicts as people are just whatever, they don't need to be looked after. But actually most people who have a drug addiction problem are actually just very sensitive people who have had some sort of trauma in their life. And so it kind of goes quite strange. So yes, I think we should decriminalise, but that we also need to take on the responsibility of looking after this sort of disenfranchised and disconnected part of society. And so using the profits from drug regulation to solve the issue of that problem. Something like 80% of people in prison have got drug addiction problems, and they come from homes, broken homes, and it's like, okay, let's actually be more empathetic to these people.
But if it was more regulated, it would produce quite a lot of money to be able to hopefully provide all the support that people need. Yeah,
definitely.
So what next for Sundog?
So we have, how old was I when I set it up? 27, I think. So we've been going for 6 years, and we won some awards and made some really great things that I'm incredibly proud of. Like any young business setting out in a very competitive market, it's been a challenge, and we've had ups and downs. But I'm, in terms of our product, we've done an incredible job, and we're at a kind of stage where, you know, for me, I'm so excited about the market changing. You know, you've got Netflix and Hulu and Amazon and iTunes all putting extortionate amounts of money into content. You know, you've got, I think Netflix put over $4.5 billion into content just this year alone. So, and those sort of subscription model channels have a much stronger interest in actually just really well told factual stories. So the market's growing, and I'm really excited to potentially kind of collaborate with some other people to take Sundog into the US market and try and create the sort of premium factual production company.
So sticking with feature documentaries?
Well, we do TV, film and branded stuff, but all stories that matter and trying to bring the audiences to important topics.
After your trip to the Arctic, you wrote a book, co-authored it with Dad. That's how we've managed to squeeze this into the Meet the Author series, even though that was 10 years ago. How did you find the writing process? How did you find the book?
So I was quite young when we wrote that book, and I'm not, I have to admit, honestly, I'm not that proud of it, purely because it was kind of, I went on a cool trip and it was like, let's get a book out. And so we had a bit of fun writing it, and it was mainly just taken off my diary. But now, as someone who's deeply passionate about writing, and you know, I do a lot of writing, and I've got a plan for another book, I go, God, the contrast that there's going to be in with the way I write now and the way I write then. But you know, I was young, and it was more kind of aimed at teenagers or kids to kind of get a little insight into the Arctic. So it was cool, it was fun, it was right for the time. But that was on the smaller trip. So if I waited a couple of years, I would have loved to have written a book about my long Arctic experience, because that was really profound.
Will your new book have that experience in it?
Yeah, I'm sure it will. You know, it's a very rough plan, but it's trying to kind of build a holistic approach to problem solving, based on my belief that we'll never change the world until we change ourselves, and all the time we're spending on trying to impact problems and solve problems that are already pre-existing. Actually, if we all focus on making sure we're the most grounded and connected, loving, you know, people, then I believe the offshoot of that is you can give unconditionally. And I think if we all gave a bit more unconditionally in the world would be a better place. And I'll use my own life experiences to inform, you know, that narrative. And you know, I specifically, the main thing is that I remember moving into my house in Oxford and setting up my wife and kids, and it was just like, oh my God, I'm living in the countryside, I've got a wife, I've got kids, this is like, and a dog, this is really surreal. And I remember this bubble bath bottle and thinking, wow, it's so beautiful. It was just so representative of just how I felt. Pan forward of like 6 months, I was going through a really rough time, and I remember looking at that bottle and it was ugly. And I was like, oh my God, I'm doing it. I'm projecting onto the world what I feel about myself. And since then, I've sort of been through this whole process of really kind of working out what's going on and deeply connected to myself. And it's been a beautifully difficult but beautiful experience. But it really, I'd always thought we manifest the narrative we tell ourselves, but it wasn't until I experienced myself how powerful that is. And actually what is it about the story we're telling ourselves and that the news and the world is telling each other that's creating a warped view of the world. And I think for me, I really want to get into, I'm really passionate about how do we reshape the global narrative in a way that gives people the chance to have an unfiltered view.
Because that external narrative is typically so negative.
Yeah, I mean,
if you're hearing
massively.
that day in, day out, it's very difficult.
Massively
for your own
negative,
personal.
taken out of context.
Yeah.
I think there needs to be more accountability for truth in the world personally, and that starts with us individually.
Well, I'm super excited about my next Meet the Author interview with you.
Give me a couple of years.
I know how difficult it is to write a book,
I know
so
you do.
I will give you those couple of years.
Yeah.